Hi, Victoria. Thanks so much for joining me, friend.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Likewise, it's been some time coming, so I'm glad we could make it happen. So, as you know, there's usually a lot of specific things I'm very excited to ask you about, but I would love to start with the stock question about your life story because for me, each person is really like a work of art in God's universe. And I want to see who this person is and understand them on their own terms and hear from them about their life and also really how they make sense of it about what happened to them. You could imagine someone like reading like a Wikipedia article about someone's life versus how that person actually shares about their own lived experience and what meaning they made of it and what sense they made. So I'd love to hear from you about your life, about what's happened so far, and you can share in any way that you like at whatever length you like. I'd love to hear it.
Okay. What a broad way to start. What a way. Um, I was born in Orange County, or I was born in LA. I was born in San Bernardino, but I spent most of my childhood in Orange County, and I really hated it. I really longed to get out. So it was always kind of my goal to leave as soon as I could. I did not resonate with I don't know, the land or the people. Um, so it was an interesting childhood in that way. And my parents got divorced when I was fairly young, and I moved around a lot and was constantly kind of going from place to place, which I think more or less informed like the foundational way I look at the world, which is that you can just kind of pick up and go anywhere and do what you want to do and see where life goes. So when I was in when I was a young teenager, I really fell in love with acting, and it was like all consuming. It completely took over my whole world. Like it's interesting because I think so much of my personality was actually formed around being an actor. And I really became driven to succeed as an actor. I always knew it was what I wanted to do, and I was going to pursue it um, relentlessly. And I did for most of my life. So when I was 17, I went and I auditioned for this school in Los Angeles called the Groundlings. Have you heard of that? Improvisation school. I was really interested in comedy, and I decided to pursue comedy, like mainly as an actor. I really loved the theater, but I really loved comedy. And I kind of began to get immersed in that world and found that it wasn't very fulfilling. You know, I was 17, 18, and I was going to parties and um, hanging out with comics and stand-up comics, and I just found it to be a bit tiring and exhausting. And simultaneously, I was auditioning for jobs and pursuing this, sort of Hollywood acting career. And there was one particular audition where I, the audition was something along the lines of, Burt Reynolds is going to be in it. If you know Burt Reynolds. I barely know who Burt Reynolds is.
Hmm. I do, yeah.
Yeah, you know him.
Hmm.
Unmute for just that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh, I know. So it was like this audition is going to be with Burt Reynolds. And I walked into this room and there was a big giant teddy bear in the room, like a life-size teddy bear. And they said, obviously, Burt Reynolds is not going to audition with you, but your job is to like kiss and sexily demonstrate to us as casting directors that you can properly seduce Burt Reynolds in the form of this teddy bear. And I kind of half-heartedly, yeah, I kind of half-heartedly did it. And I walked out of the room and was like, I'm never doing that again. Like that is the last time I do something like that. Because I really fell in love with acting. And it's like I found myself as this 18-year-old doing stuff like that just over and over again, like one thing after the other. And I said, I'm done. And I had, when you become, or at least back then, back in the day, when you were an actor, you spent a lot of time looking at your headshot and looking at videos and posting them to things and like very consuming. And I just thought like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's so degrading. I'm finished. And so I went to New York. I think a lot of my life story is actually like place based. There are eras of my life that I designate by place. So New York, I studied Meisner, which I think has sort of made its way around the Twitter sphere of you repeat. It's essentially like repetition, where you honestly and sort of spontaneously and authentically respond to the person in front of you. And I studied Meisner really seriously and was even studying some modern dance and different things at this school. And one of the kind of tenets of Meisner is authenticity. And the idea behind a lot of what I was taught at that school was that if you as a person are not authentically connected to the truth, whether that be literally lying or just not completely living out the life story that your soul is asking to live, you're never going to be a good artist or a good actor because there will always be a kind of obfuscation, a barrier between you and the character you're playing. And the audience can sort of intuitively sense that. So in New York, New York would be where I really began my pursuit of self-inquiry and discovery. And I found when I was living there, particularly through this really authentic and deep introspection, I became really unhappy with who I was and really unhappy with a lot of the behaviors I had had as a teenager. And simultaneous to that, I also was kind of uncovering that I had some serious trauma and dysfunction in my childhood through how I was raised by my dad. And I wasn't quite able to understand at that time that my behaviors and the problems I had begun to uncover in myself were actually like quite obviously traceable back to a traumatic. So I really turned in on myself and became quite depressed. And I think New York just sort of became this dark place for me. So in keeping with the trajectory of my life, I moved from New York to London, kind of like hopping east. And after much therapy and much more introspection, I sort of brought myself out of a dark place and out of that depression. And I studied Shakespeare and classical theater in London. And I really loved London. I tried to stay. I applied for a visa. I was rejected. But I would have stayed there and just done Shakespeare probably for the rest of my life if I could have. I loved it so much. Uh, but then I went back to LA and I kind of continued to pursue acting. Um, and again, sort of like as lessons kind of are, is spiralic a word?
I don't know.
Spiralic.
It should be though. I know what you mean. I live
Yeah.
it.
In a sort of like spiralic trajectory, I then again was like kind of pursuing film acting. And as a job, I was a part-time Disney princess for birthday parties, which I did, which I more or less enjoyed. It was pretty wholesome, actually. I have like some wild stories from being a Disney princess and the occasional mascot. So like I was Minions sometimes, and anyway, I enjoyed being a Disney princess, but then I was also a promotional model. So like this was again sort of something I look back on not very fondly. It's like a promotion. Do you know what a promotional model is?
I can guess, but can you say?
Yeah, it's like it's girls at expos or bars or something and they're wearing like a Jack Daniels shirt
Hmm.
and they're going up to you at a bar and being like, "Do you want a shot? Do you want a shot? Here's a necklace. Oh
Uh-huh.
my gosh, are you having a good time?" And essentially you're hired by Jack Daniels to do whatever. And then at expos or things like that, you're like standing at a booth being like, "Have you tried solar?" Solar energy is really good. Um, and that was another like strange moment where I was beginning to kind of like, I would say spiral into this sort of like to draw it back to the teddy bear, the Burt Reynolds teddy bear. It was like a very similar thing where I was like kind of losing my center in the name of having a flexible job for auditions. In addition to the fact that I also cannot hold a 9 to 5 job. So at the time, like this princessing and this promotional modeling was what seemed really doable. But eventually I was kind of headed down that trajectory and I was able to do more theater and quit promotional modeling and was kind of having some beginning to have some inkling of success in Los Angeles. I was cast in some things and I got cast in this or I accidentally wound up being in this TV show Nathan for You, which started to become this pretty popular moment. And again, like interestingly, I had been pursuing acting my whole life. And after this Nathan for You experience, I in fact did have some directors reaching out and saying, like, would you like to come in? And I actually found it really scary. And people were starting to kind of recognize me on the street for this viral moment. And I was really uncomfortable with it. Like something just deep in me was like, ah, I don't like this, leave me alone, which is interesting because I really had been kind of pursuing something like that my whole life. And I had a friend who moved to Prague, and I went to go visit her, and she was stage managing a play, an English speaking play, and one of the actresses had dropped out and was no longer in the play. And I was there visiting her and watching the rehearsal, and they said, "Oh, you're an actor. Will you do it?" I was like, "Sure. Yeah, why not?" So I was in this play in the Czech Republic, and it went up, we performed a couple days later, and a casting director was in the audience for a video game. And they asked me to come in. I wound up auditioning several times for this video game. And I booked it, and they asked me to sign a contract to stay in the Czech Republic for a couple years so that I could work on this video game. And that I would say really began, like my Prague years, my Europe years, really began what I would say to shape the formative person that I am. In part because like I had total freedom there. It was really cheap to live. I was suddenly in this video game and doing voiceover work, which has since become my main career, which gave me all of the freedom to do what I wanted to do with none of the degradation. And um, I also like in the Czech Republic, I began taking psychedelics. I did a wild amount of psychedelics. Like it was a huge part of my existence. I did it as a in meditation and reflection. Like I almost always exclusively did it solo. But I can sort of consider my like true, if I look back on like the trajectory of my life, I don't feel necessarily a lot of continuity with myself before the point at which I started taking psychedelics, which was 10 years ago now, basically. And so like the last 10 years, I can say like I relate fairly strongly to this person, like almost from my first LSD trip to now. There was kind of no going back. And in Prague, um, I was able to get cast in a bunch of big Hollywood TV shows. So I was able to have this like success as an actor that I had never really had because a bunch of Hollywood shows filmed there. And at the same time, I was like beginning to do all of these psychedelics, which were sort of dissolving my desire to be known as an actor in that way. And I think the real nail in the coffin was um, I through a series of events became a celebrity personal assistant to an I guess he would be an A-list celebrity, probably. Um, and for just under a year, I was his personal assistant, and I got to see what his life was like. Here, like this thing I had sort of been meccaing towards my whole life of I'm going to be an actor and I'm going to be in movies and I'm going to do this thing. And I had such an intimate view into what his world was, how he worked, how he was treated. I met so many people who were famous, for lack of a better, just famous people. And I was so unimpressed by it and so discouraged by it. And I was really looking at his life and thinking, I do not, no part of me wants this life. I don't want to be, I can't believe I've devoted like all of my precious life force to this. This is the apex. I'm looking at it, I'm in it, and it's not special at all. There's a lot of like attention and glitter, but substance is not guaranteed up there. And interestingly, he was so famous and he had a friend who was even more famous than him. And he was constantly talking to me like, God, well, he has a jet. Like, and he does this and it's like, and I would look at him and be like, wow, there really is no satisfaction here. There. Like there, and I'm almost positive that that famous friend was looking at his famous friend going like, well, but that guy. And so I just sort of got to really live within the trappings of that world. And I think that more or less helped me kind of lay down this, I don't know how to describe it. It was like a crux in my mind of like, I have to be an actor, I have to be successful. And that I think really helped lay it down. There was kind of like, um, what's it called after an earthquake?
Hmm.
When there's still,
Aftershocks?
yeah, there was still some aftershocks of pursuit, but it's that whole thing really settled. And I decided at that point, like what I actually love is stories and storytelling and connecting with people. And I love the shamanic aspect of being a storyteller in that you're really transmuting the energies of the people before you. And that's a sacred job and a serious job. And you should devote like the preciousness that is your energy to pure, fruitful, and nourishing storytelling. And eventually I moved back from Prague back to Los Angeles, where I am now. I got married, I got divorced, and I got married again and had a baby, and I'm here.
Hmm.
Here as a mom and filmmaker. And I've never actually told my life story before. It's interesting because it is like I'm looking at myself and it is really place-based. It's like there was this place and this place and this place. But yeah, that's how I would encapsulate it, I would say.
Hmm. I love that story, and I'm just going to take a moment to feel it in my body before I ask you questions because I really loved it. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there's something really nourishing about that story. Thank you. Um, I'm curious from your early chapter in LA and your childhood, what it was that you hated about the place so much as a kid. Like what was distasteful and dispreferable about it for you?
I think there's a literal element to it, a kind of I always call it like you are what you eat, but you are what you see. So lots of businesses and stucco and house, and homeowners associations of you can't have overgrown hedges and you can't do this and there are weeds, neighbor, can you pluck them and things like that. And big cars and people with Starbucks cups and just this kind of like consumerism that I think I found kind of sickening even as a kid. And just this like stucco brightness, stifling feeling that I just always sensed and always longed to get out of. Really. I mean, no, like I would never want to make someone feel, I don't want to talk down on it to the extent that someone who lives there who likes it feels bad. But like just for me, that sort of clean, tidy, um, so there's like an implicit understanding that you should behave in a certain way and you shouldn't be weird and you shouldn't think strange things. you should just mow your lawn and move on, that I really found oppressing. It's like as a kid and a teenager.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Has that changed for you?
No.
Uh-huh.
No.
Yeah.
I I briefly, like, because of my husband had like needs. I lived in Orange County for 2 years in the recent past, and I hated it. Like, I really hated it. I really disliked it. And I think I kept trying to say, like, all right, I'm here. I should embrace where I am, and I'm going to try and just accept that this is the place. And I would work through different things. But then I moved back to LA, and I'm just like, oh, I'm really happy here.
Hmm.
Really good here. This is much better.
Hmm.
So there is an extent to which I've accepted that the place you're in matters. Like, maybe at a certain point it doesn't, or with a certain mental framework it doesn't, but I personally thrive elsewhere.
Hmm. Hmm. What called you to acting so strongly?
I I was naturally drawn to it. From a really young age, it was one of my favorite things in the world to watch a movie and then go into my backyard and reenact the movie. I don't know why. And I was always, even as a young kid, really young, like 4, 3, I was always really drawn to melancholy and melodrama and, like, oh, that juicy, like, sad longing. I just loved it.
Hmm.
I used to, like, get the hose and create puddles and take a leaf and, like, float the leaf over the puddle and see the reflection of the sky and sing Mulan. I just liked it. So there was just something naturally in me that I think it's like, if we're all sort of worker bees and we all have these natural emergent talents, like mine was a sort of, I loved to replicate and regurgitate stories as a vessel for that story. I just loved it.
And you mentioned having an early draw towards comedy. What attracted you to comedy early on?
Again, I think there was just like something natural about it. Like, I was sort of born with like this, I was born weird. I was born with this sort of absurdist world view. When I look at like Charlie Kaufman, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or some of these like stranger, trippier stories, that was just how I viewed the world. It was like, yes, yes, Charlie, me and you, Charlie Kaufman, something similar here. The world is just like a big, beautiful, strange circus. So I think I liked it. And I loved laughing with people and making people laugh.
Hmm.
I loved it. And I still do. I still do like making people laugh if I am so lucky as to make someone laugh. Um, but yeah, and there's so much intelligence in comedy. Because actually, like, what a comedian is doing is they're kind of abstracting in real time and then creating something clever very quickly out of that. So a comedian who makes a joke is kind of doing something meta and impressive. Like, they see the moment, they seize it, they abstract from it and like tell you what's weird about it, but in such a way that tickles you and delights you. It's so intelligent and it's almost a science that should be really appreciated. I like if someone can when someone's funny, I look at them and I say like, mm-hmm, I see you. You're smart and you're like uh yeah, kind of comedians to their detriment. And I think it's what drew me away from comedy in that, like, comedians kind of have the ability to step back away from any situation, from themselves or from you or from the social situation, and observe it and kind of like create something new and funny out of it, which I relate to that. And I relate to the feeling of like you're standing in a room full of people and you feel kind of apart from them, or you feel like you're kind of observing. But then the downfall of that is that you can also kind of like distance yourself from meaningful conversation and truth and use it like, and I think most comedians I've met in my life have used it as a shield of like some uncomfortable vulnerability is about to come up and it's like, ooh, joke. And that was what tired me of like when I was originally in LA and I decided to go pursue theater more seriously, it was like I just wanted to have a conversation with someone where just for a minute, like if we touched something real, it wasn't immediately manipulated.
Hmm. Did you notice any trends or patterns in forms of comedy that you especially liked? I mean, you talked a little bit about that, but things that you found especially funny or resonant for you?
I really like oh my gosh, there's this movie I just watched and I feel like it really summed it up for me. I think it's called Brain Candy.
Hmm.
You heard of this movie?
I haven't.
I won't even dare summarize it, but it was this movie called Brain Candy, and you go through this whole kind of like absurdist world with a pharmaceutical company trying to sell people a pill to cure depression. But like for some reason, the movie ended with a grandma floating away on, it makes me laugh even think about it. A grandma like floating away because she has too many balloons in her hand and she's like, oh no. But like the movie was had nothing to do with that. And it made me laugh. It still makes me laugh to think about, which I think would be to say, like I really appreciate randomness in comedy. Like I really appreciate like the curveballs of like, oh, why did they say that? Why did you do that? And I appreciate absurdism. That would be the word. Like
Mhm.
absurdism in comedy. Like if it's really strange and it feels like sometimes bordering on gibberish, I'm really, really delighted by it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
Do you think you could put words to what your younger self was feeling or standing for when you had that experience with the Burt Reynolds teddy bear and you said no more? Like what was the principle you were standing for when you made that decision?
Mm. Yeah, I don't talk about this like so much, so it's hard to find specific words for it, I guess. But I have like, just to put it bluntly, like I have like a curvaceous body. Um, and it's darker now, but like I had blonder hair. And I was always really judged fairly quickly by people. I think in a way, comedy was partially my way to combat that. And I would lean really hard into like self-effacing comedy to try and ward off anyone from either to kind of try and ward off men from thinking I was like a bimbo or to ward off women from thinking I was a threat.
Hmm.
Comedy was a way to be like, don't worry, I'm just a silly kid. I'm just a silly person, you know? Like that was kind of my entrance into comedy was a way to like push up against a stereotype I was really struggling with. So the Burt Reynolds thing was, I think, me just really saying like I will not lean into what I've been stereotyped as for most of my life. And I mean, I was 18, like I was like we're talking about stereotypes as a teenager. So I was being kind of again, like just bluntly, like over sexualized
Hmm.
as a teenager. And it was confusing and I didn't understand it. I just knew it felt bad.
Hmm.
Just knew it felt or it felt bad in that like I wasn't equipped at the time or ready to navigate it. And I also wasn't equipped at the time to see the power in it. Like now that I'm old, And it doesn't really matter if I'm sexy and I'm a mom. It doesn't really matter so much if I'm sexy or not. I'm like, wow, I have an amazing body. And like, this is beautiful. And I have such deep feminine power. And how lucky I am to be shaped in this way and to move through the world. I did not have that at all. Through most of the time when I would have been considered like a sexual object or whatever you might want to call it, I was just like I was in a word humiliated by it.
Hmm.
And so I look back on the Burt Reynolds thing and like I feel proud of myself for walking out and saying I'm not going to do that anymore. And then another part of me is also like, ah, like, well,
Hmm.
they were filling a role, you like looked like it, and you could have done up your sex appeal thing.
Hmm.
Why not? Who cares? Like they were gonna look at you that way anyway. So why not just like embrace it and have fun? Like
Hmm.
there are a lot of girls on the internet right now who I think are like doing that in a way that a lot of people would find upsetting, but I actually am like, good for you.
Hmm.
Like you are beautiful. Do it. Like make that video. You're gorgeous. Have fun, you know? So like I don't necessarily even as an 18-year-old like fully think I was doing the right thing. But at the time I did need to, I suppose, demonstrate to myself that I was more than that. Because I suppose I didn't believe I was necessarily more than that, or I struggled with the belief that I was more than that. It was
Hmm.
many years until I really became comfortable with different parts of my identity.
This might be off base, but I'm juxtaposing that in my mind with what you said about comedy and how often you've noticed comedians have some kind of like core feeling they're really trying to avoid. And anytime you get close to that, they're making a joke. And you said like you would turn to comedy to kind of show the world that you weren't this stereotype. And I wonder if those things are connected, which they might not be, not to put you on the spot, but like what if they are, what the feeling there was that you were avoiding at the time.
Hmm. You know what? I've never made this connection. In fact,
Hmm.
I never made this connection until this exact moment I'm having it now. Is that, yeah, that's probably why.
Oh.
That's almost certainly why I was drawn to it. Again, in part because like I do think part of what makes a comedian is like there's like a feeling of dichotomy of like, I'm walking into this room, I'm supposed to feel this way, but in fact I feel this way. And so I will make a joke of it.
Hmm.
And I think that is what drew me to comedy. Aside from the fact that it is fun to be funny and it is fun to have fun. And it's just like, I do think some people are born with the ability to improv and things like that. Um, so I certainly genuinely liked it. Like I could have actually like rebelled against my sexuality in any number of ways. I could have like gotten a pixie cut and become a monk and moved to China. That's another form of rebellion, right?
Hmm.
But I did improv. That was
Hmm.
how I, so. But yeah, I think you're spot on. It's really interesting to put that together actually after so many years.
It makes me wonder if you think, I wonder if you've had an experience of watching a comedian and getting a sense of almost the gestalt of the thing that they're avoiding feeling through their comedy. Is that an experience that you've had?
No, no, like I'm not necessarily always watching comedy like that, but
Yeah.
I probably could. Like if you and I sat and watched comedy specials, which I now want to invite you to do next time you're in LA, it would be fun to sit there and have a viewing party and be like, what do you think their core wound is?
Uh-huh.
What do you think their core wound is? Because I'm sure you could find it. But I think you can kind of find it in any artist, right? Like I feel like a lot of artists are pursuing, regardless of how diversified their portfolio is, they're kind of pursuing a singular thing. I think we talked about this at that dinner party actually, which was like what is your core pursuit?
Hmm.
And it's like no matter what you make or what story you tell or what picture you paint or what essay you write, you're kind of you're kind of saying the same thing over and over again.
That's true for all artists except me, Victoria.
Yeah,
I don't have any core
not
wounds.
you.
There's
No, I
no,
know.
yeah,
I know you don't.
yeah,
But so you cannot relate, of course.
yeah, of
Us
course.
peons are stuck in rev no. I think it's actually lovely. Like I think it's beautiful because it's like this, one little corner of the universe
Mm,
saying like, here's my special message.
mm,
This way and this way and this way and this way.
mm.
Again, not you, of course, but
No, yes, yeah.
the other eyes. Yeah.
I wonder about this sometimes with comedians who I could be wrong, but I always feel a little sad when I see comedians who are really, 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 really good at not breaking when there's a funny joke because I imagine, and I could be wrong, but that they're like very good at repressing emotions under those circumstances and just like, I will not break, and I feel like it's very human to break when there's a funny joke. So, but it's sort of prestigious for a comedian to not break if something's funny. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think like I don't even know, it might not be control. Like sometimes it's the level to which you're committed to the character or the bit.
Mm,
Like the reason we laugh at a comedian's character is because like that character that they're portraying means it. That's what's funny about it.
mm,
Like they really care if the pie gets in the oven. Like
mm.
it has to. Like we know it doesn't matter if the pie gets in the oven. But they, like, life or death, the pie must get in the oven. So I think sometimes, like, a comedian who doesn't break is just, like, very immersed in getting the pie in the oven to the extent that, like, they're forgetting the comedy of it for our benefit, you know?
Mm, mm.
But but there's also like this kind of meta thing of sometimes breaking is funny and we laugh because you're breaking. So
Yeah,
like I guess Jimmy Fallon is kind of famous for that, of like part of his comedy is in breaking and we enjoy it, you know?
I definitely break. So, huh. Switching gears a bit, what would you say this doesn't really feel like the right question, but we'll use the words that are available. What would you say you learned through psychedelics, through that chapter of your life and encountering uh, that practice?
Yeah, I mean, I had always had a spiritual pursuit in my life. Like, I actually think as Daniel Ingram will talk about, I think I had a spontaneous stream entry in like classical meditation terms when I was younger.
Hmm.
Uh, and you kind of, once you have that, you kind of don't really go back. So I think I was on this path. I was on this path either way. Um, but despite having some semblance of a meditation practice and some like a belief in a soul and the spiritual nature of the universe, for lack of a better term, psychedelics really like broke down in phases. Psychedelics like broke down the fundamental way in which I looked at the world. So like my very first like revelation was me just sitting there like as the psychedelics were kicking in, I just kept going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's no such thing as that. Like there's no days of the week, you know? Like kind of like the classic like what is a chair? What is my hand, like the beginnings of breaking down of like societal constructs. Again, it was like fairly like real world. Like I also was like, oh, obviously Republicans aren't evil. What a strange delusion I had that half of the population is a bad guy. That's odd. Like things like that. And then as I went further into like as I went further into psychedelic use, it became I think all of the same things that sort of occur on a path of serious meditation of like on a human level it was breaking down patterns that I had and ego and These things are challenging to discuss, I guess, like time and existence, um, reconstructing the fundamental way with which I interact with all matter and all thoughts and consciousness, reconstructing my view of the world, the universe, little stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I mean, like, I think I essentially recommended or not, I used psychedelics as a facilitation to my meditation. So I would take psychedelics and I'd meditate for 12 hours or whatever it was. And I think just gradually kind of deconstructing the world, deconstructing deconstruction, and coming closer to just being would be how I'd describe a lot of that period.
What preceded your stream entry experience in your earlier life?
It was a dream. It was a dream.
Hmm.
Um, and I was probably like 6 years old, and I woke from the dream and like everything was just kind of different.
Hmm.
Something strange had happened. So, and then as a teenager, I think that kind of informed my worldviews, but I got a little bit specific and calcified some of my mystical beliefs in a way that in a way that I think I could only do at the time, which is like I was very interested in um, crystals and Wicca and spells and all of this stuff, which I will still say I actually like, I don't throw that out the window. I sort of have a different framework to how I approach those things now. But um, yeah, but through being a teenager, I was also having like meditative stream entry like experiences that again I think like there was this sort of spiritual barometer pressure cooker that was going to build up and burst at some point, and at times like it was intense and at times it was painful, but I think psychedelics also helped me sort of make sense of what had been occurring since I was really little, like since I was like 6.
Hmm.
It helped make sense of the kind of way through which I was navigating the reality of the world, which was kind of always with this discernment, again, even as a little kid, of like, is this really real? Is this really happening? I'm not sure, you know?
How did you understand magic and spells earlier in your life, and what's the frame that you see them through now?
Earlier in my life, it was just quite literal. Like, okay, I'm gonna play the Ouija board and I'm going to um, put the lemon zest on the rose petal and light the black candle and say the incantation. And like I would find a stick and turn it into kind of a wand. And I think I like even as a teenager, I was accepting of the fact of like, well, even if the spell isn't literally true, it might work because of blah, blah, blah. And I used to go to like a tarot card reader. And I remember again when I was a teenager, and I remember thinking like, well, either way, I'm getting the message. Like this is occurring in the universe. This is happening. The universe is speaking to me and telling me exactly what I need to hear. Like whether or not this person is what I would consider psychic or not, it doesn't really matter. They're speaking to me. Therefore, there is something to hear. And I think that sort of thinking is how I have reoriented towards spell work and things like that, or through magic, like uh more classical or Kabbalistic or like deep esotericism magic. I really kind of believe that all forms of existence and intention are spells. Like everything we're doing at all times is a spell. Occasionally, they're really mild spells or accidental spells. Like we're just talking to someone back and forth. Like you and I are kind of casting spells and transmuting each other through this conversation. Like that to me is an act of magic. And then I think you can also create an intention for something specific. And even with the use of tools like crystals or something like that, use it as a way to bolster up your personal power and intention. And I do believe you can call things into being like through acts of intention. But I think I have a finer understanding now of what you should and shouldn't call into attention. Um, the responsibility you have for the world around you, meaning like if you want something to occur and you're going to cast a spell to have it come to you, it should, to the best of your ability, not interact with anyone else, especially like your close loved ones. Um, and also to be like careful what you devote your energy to and what you kind of call into your life. To be careful, to be specific, and to have a sense of power and responsibility in what you're asking and willing to be.
Hmm. I wonder if you could speak to your relationship with fame over time. And it sounds like for some period of life you had that kind of as a goal, and then that dissolved. And I wonder if you could articulate how you used to see it before that dissolved, and then what seems like a good life now. Like what is a beautiful life to you now?
Hmm. I wouldn't say that like the act of being famous or being known was an implicit desire of mine, even throughout pursuing it. Like, I do think a fair number of people, there's a kind of like colloquial joke or colloquialism about actors of like, oh, their mommy didn't love them. And so now they need the world to love them or something like that. I think there's likely a truth to that for a fair number of people. For me personally, it it wasn't actually really about that. And it wasn't about necessarily even outer validation of my worthiness to exist or things like that. I think fame was the marker of success for an actor. And I would say I actually, like, my entanglement wasn't with wanting to be famous, it was more with wanting to be successful. And you can't measure your success as an actor without it naturally having some amount of fame to go with it. That is the measure of success. And like when you tell people you're an actor, they're like, what have I seen you in?
Hmm.
You know, it is just a piece of it. So I fell in love with storytelling and acting before I knew it was a job. And then once I knew it was a job, I really wanted to succeed at it. I really wanted to do it and see it too through its, I wanted to see it to its fruition. And like one of the interesting things I learned with being this personal assistant to the celebrity was like, there is no actual moment where you're famous. There's no moment where you're like, ah, I've crossed the line from not famous into famous. Like you're actually, what fame is actually this sort of like ever evolving and really mercurial trickster spirit that will waft over you and pull away from you. And if you want it and you desire it, like you're in for a real roller coaster of a ride because you're never going to really know you have it. You can't control the trickster spirit of fame. She is not to be controlled. Like, so I think I think the entanglement was really around success. So what I really like had to do was to kind of get out of the trap of wanting that. I had to kind of I had to more so examine what it was in me that needed success. And in that pursuit was this idea of like worthiness and self, like inherent value. Like, ah, yes, like some part of me does not feel completely comfortable and worthy of just being alive, just being a person. I need to have something to show for it, which is, I think, frankly, how most people still are. Again, like mine becomes entangled with this fame thing, but actually it was about worthiness. So the only way, like no amount of talking or thinking or reasoning could ever get me away from wanting to be successful. The only possible avenue and the only nourishing avenue I found towards that was increasing my inherent self-worth. So as I began to love myself more and trust myself more and heal the parts of me that didn't feel like it was okay to just be alive and that is enough. Naturally, the success thing kind of flitted away because success was like no longer an indication of whether or not I got a hall pass from God to being worthy of this life. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's more or less my relationship with it now. And like, it comes in this like, oh, you should do that. You should. Mm.
Mm.
And I look at it, I'm like, no, no. No, no, not you. Like, I just want to have some ice cream. I just want to be alive. I just want to cuddle with my son and go on a walk and feel the sunshine on my skin. That's enough. Get out of here.
Mm.
I like it still kind of like trickles in. I think in part because again, it's just like you are what you eat, you are what you see. Like we're really in a society that like harness your power, do this, like monetize your blah blah blah. And it's really tempting to fall back into wanting to be successful in some way. But to me, the antidote to that, like, really is just a good meal, good friends, like a breeze outside. Really, really simple stuff.
Mm. I feel that so strongly when you speak about it and also in your presence generally. And I think that this is what is truly beautiful about you.
Hmm. That's really nice. Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you. I feel the same about you too.
Mm.
Yeah. You almost like command. Yeah, well, command is an interesting word. Invite. You invite a presence in the people around you. That's what it felt like to sit at a table with you in person, especially. I was like, oh, he's really here.
Mm.
I would like to be here too.
Mm. How would you say you learned to love yourself and to see your own self-worth? Do you remember any specifics of what that lesson was like and how you internalized that?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say there was a specific moment it really turned. It was kind of gradual for most of my life and like certainly through deep inquiry and meditation and psychedelics it helped. But it was really a moment on psychedelics. I hesitate actually to call ayahuasca a psychedelic,
Mm.
but it was in it was during an ayahuasca ceremony and there were two things that happened back to back which really both informed each other. And the first was that um I allowed by like a benevolent spiritual energy in the ayahuasca ceremony said, "Can I look at your heart?" And I said, "Yes, you can." And they reached into my heart and they put it on this golden platter. And it was just this shining golden thing. And they were like, "Look, that's you. That's your heart." And I just started laughing. like busting up laughing because I was like, oh my God. Like this there's like this internal pursuit for like what is the bad thing inside of me? Like what am I doing wrong? How am I hurting people? What is this bad thing? I'm gonna find it. Like it's in there. And like keep searching and keep trying to find like trying to scratch the itch. I'm glad you're laughing because I know you know. And I looked at my heart on this platter and it was just so funny. It was like, oh my God, like you poor innocent thing. Like your intentions are just so good. Like it's almost like, oh my God. I mean, in no way, it's beautiful. It's incredible. It's not pathetic, but it's almost like pathetic of like you're so nice. Like get the fuck out of here. You're so nice. Like why are you doing this to yourself? Look at your little cute golden heart. Like you just love people, you just want the best. Yes, you mess up and like yes, you can be a terror, but like look at this gold. And that was like this moment. And I really do. I remember just like cracking up laughing, like in part because it was just so funny that I would ever think otherwise. Like so that was the first half. And then the second half was a kind of life review in which I went back and I experienced my trauma and the trauma of my childhood, which which was abuse, like physical and emotional abuse from a parent. And I had done so much therapy and I had done so many psychedelics. I mean, truly hundreds of psychedelic trips, hundreds and hundreds of hours of meditation and inquiry. And I intellectually understood that what had happened to me was not my fault. I, of course, knew that like that happening to a child from their parent has nothing to do with the child. Like in my brain, I knew this. I had accepted it. I had worked through it. Like I fully understood. But in this ceremony, I like went back and I literally looked at my child self and I saw that she didn't understand that, essentially. And in my body, like in my animal body and deep in my gut and my soul and my biology, like I hadn't, well, no, actually, not in my soul, but deep in my body, I hadn't actually really accepted that it wasn't my fault. And it occurred to me that, like, actually, to like, even though it's simple, most every problem I ever had in my life stems from that thing, from that trauma that I endured. Like any behavior I wasn't proud of, any like issues I had, all of this shame I had built up over things I'd done wrong. Again, I'm still responsible for the things I've done wrong, undoubtedly. But like I saw where it came from and I had so much compassion for it. And I just like I was prompted by the ayahuasca to look at that little girl and tell her it wasn't your fault. Wasn't your fault. It really wasn't. And in that synthesis, like something deep within me understood, that trauma was not my fault. And that was the moment that I think I really finally, like, I still struggle with stuff. Stuff still comes up. But like, I, something clicked in me, something clicked in me, which was interesting because I had sort of always kind of believed that maybe trauma was like an excuse. It's become in some ways a buzzword, and people are like, my trauma, you know? So it, like there's some judgment around the word. But like I also really accepted, like, oh wow, that's real. That really happened. That was like a bone that fractured and splintered out throughout my life. It's real. Like it's actually real. And it if you have trauma, it's worthwhile to address it because it kind of, depending on the severity, can touch everything. And it was easy even to look back on that and say, like, I think as a kid, when you experience any sort of like violence towards you, some inherent part of you is going to say, like, what have I done to get this? And like I can look back on my life and see all the ways in which I can certainly see, at the very least, the way in which being successful would give me permission to be alive. Like, if there's this part of me that since I was a kid was going like, something's not right about me. Something is wrong. I know I'll be a famous actress. Like, I know that'll fix, like, then I'll feel fine. And I do think, like, if you don't address stuff like that, you can just go your whole damn life like in pursuit of something when actually like the most simple thing is just love. Love yourself. That's what you need. It'll cure a lot, I think.
Hmm. Thank you for relating that experience and imparting that lesson. I really appreciate it. It's always beautiful to hear people speak to love and their own encounter with it. So thank you. You said that you're hesitant to refer to ayahuasca as a psychedelic. Can you say more about that?
I would agree with the perspective of the tribes who administer it in that it is a plant medicine. So I would call it like it is so medicinal in my opinion, that it feels like I would classify it differently than LSD or I don't know. Honestly, I would hesitate to call anything psychedelic in that way. I think I more relate to the term entheogen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But particularly with ayahuasca, I think it deserves a kind of reverence and respect, uh, more inclined towards the natural world than something that would be synthesized like other whatnots.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about the history of your relationship with that medicine?
Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite of the bunch. It was the one I always was really, truly most interested in trying. I read a book when I was a kid that mentioned it, and I remember I must have been 12 or something like that. And I said, like, I'm gonna do that. I cannot wait to do that. But I've engaged in ceremonies, um, and I really believe in it, and I really value it. I think I value it specifically because other psychedelics, I feel like, especially if you're using other psychedelics medicinally, you can often go down like you can go really far down paths or thought patterns, and you have to be really strong and really disciplined to like come back to your center and like go back towards what you were kind of aiming for. And ayahuasca very naturally kind of guides you through the experience. Many people who take it agree that it feels like there's this um, conscious entity that sort of takes you through the experience. And in that, I find it to be really, I don't know if easy is the right word because it's certainly not easy, but easy to navigate in the narrative sense of like LSD, you could be like, you could really go far out. And there's value in that. Like there's value in that level of like ego death or deconstruction of reality and things like that. But ayahuasca is a lot more focused on like, here you are, here's what you need, here's what you should look at and see now at this present moment in time. And
Hmm.
I appreciate that a lot.
What was the original impetus or inspiration to make your documentary?
I first saw the visions for it on ayahuasca. So it was in ceremony. And I felt from this entity, I'll call her, I felt called to make it. Like it was sort of a question of, I think you could tell a story. Do you want to do it? Are you up for it? And I, in that moment, said, yes, I do. I do agree. And the ayahuasca said, okay, I'll make it easy for you. I'll make it easy for you. So don't worry about it. And I think like I think there was something that was being asked to explore in this realm that wasn't being explored, which was like there are a lot of extremes. There's sort of two extreme camps with psychedelics, which is like, you gotta do it, it'll change your life. It's amazing. This is the only way to go. Just take all the drugs, just do it. And then there's this other camp of like, it's kind of dangerous. People can go crazy. You shouldn't do it. These shamans are scammers. Be afraid. Like, both really existed, these sort of exposés and and then also these kind of like, I called them like fantasy tourism ads. And the thing is like I would more agree with the side that says this is really an incredible thing. This is powerful stuff. But there was kind of a middle way that I don't think was being explored, which was like the idea that yes, this is really undoubtedly powerful, but the people administering them are human beings. They're not deities, they're not gods. Like as Westerners, I think it's really tempting to glorify, like in a way that's almost patronizing. Like, well, they're indigenous, so they must know.
Hmm.
They must know something we don't know because they're so poor, you know? It's like there is like that, it's kind of almost we can't help it. And I really and I think then like if you kind of look at the way ayahuasca shaman lives their life, it would be very easy to discount them as scammers. So in the camp of like, stay away, this is bad, they would look at a lot of the stuff that I filmed and spoke about the shaman doing and be like, well, obviously this is fake.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to tell a story about um, a person who does this for a career, who administers ayahuasca. And I wanted to tell it in a way that wasn't unnecessarily glorifying her, despite the incredible things she can do. And also didn't, uh, vilify her for the mistakes she makes as a woman. Like I wanted to tell, yeah, I wanted to find some sort of middle ground to synthesize either they're gods or they're scammers.
Hmm.
Think something in the middle is true, and it's much more interesting there.
Hmm. You wrote somewhere that I often think that the shoot was stranger than the film itself. Can you speak to that?
Oh, yeah, it was yeah, let me think about that. Um, you know what? It was really weird. Like it was actually a really weird set. And I didn't capture everything that I would have captured if I were to go back now. When I was filming, it was my first film. So I was inexperienced in part. Like I would truly almost definitely make an entirely different movie now if I went back to film it. In fact, I would probably not make it because I'd be
Hmm.
like, that is too hard. Only a crazy person would fly to the jungle and make a feature film for her first movie. Like, what were you thinking? But I'm happy I did it. Um, but it was strange because the ayahuasca center itself was a bit different than I expected. I had been in contact with Estella, who was the shaman I followed, and I had seen a lot of footage of the center and stuff, but I don't feel like the footage really did it justice, which is that like it was probably I would call it like a step below camping
Hmm.
even. Like really we were sleeping in beds that were like crawling with like really weird jungle bugs and ants and we were truly like plopped into the middle of the jungle. So that was interesting in and of itself. But then uh there were I spoke about it in the essay that you pulled this from, but like when we got there, our translator had apparently fallen in love with one of the participants who was taking ayahuasca, and he was kind of like a legacy guest. He'd been there for a while, and he knew better than to fall in love with her, said the other guests. And she was covered in these like big gaping wounds
Hmm.
when we arrived, in a lot of pain. And the other guests were like, you know, she shouldn't have fallen in love. Like she's got all these wounds. And it was just kind of strange. Like the vibe was just like a little bit off. And eventually the translator, like before we started filming, he ran away in the night with this woman. So for starters, like the whole film, which was Estella speaks Shipibo, and which is the tribe she's from, and she speaks Spanish. And none of us spoke Spanish because the translator was supposed to do it. So for starters, like I made the whole film without understanding anything she was saying and without her understanding anything I had said. And I like conducted really extensive, like multi-hour long interviews with her where I could sort of, I think, energetically understand what she was saying and occasionally literally piece together what she was saying. But I mostly couldn't. And so it's like I had so much, I had hours and hours of interviews with her that I didn't even know what she had said
Hmm.
until I got home. And like, all sorts of stuff. And there was a strange woman there who, again, like rumors were floating that she was a refugee or she was on the lam. And other people said, like, oh, she's undergoing a solitary ritual, and she's losing her mind. But she would storm through the center and like demand food and water and like be like, I want to go home. And Estella would like sort of quietly speak to her and whisper to her. And just kind of like there's just kind of drama like that I wouldn't expect at an ayahuasca center. And Estella asked me not to film it. And I respected her wishes and I didn't film it. And I like even talking about it now, I feel a slight sense of guilt. But I also have since making the movie come around to the idea of like, no, but that happened. Like, because I want to protect her from saying that like her ayahuasca center was like a bit strange. But the truth is that it was a bit strange. And like I couldn't at the time I was really respectful to her. I didn't film her when she asked not to be filmed. Like she would dress up really like blue glittery eyeshadow and like a dress like she would like she was going out on the town, like going to a club or something. And she wouldn't like please don't film. And I'd be like, okay. So there were elements of her life that were like really just a bit odd, I'd say. And I didn't pursue those threads. And I still look back and wonder if that was the honest thing to do or not.
Hmm. What even is a documentary in your mind? How do you see what that form of creation is?
You know what? I think it would really depend on the filmmaker. Like there are varying degrees of truth, but I think a documentary is still very much a story, loosely, loosely based upon fact, because you can't piece something together without a perspective and a framework that will inform it. So like if and if you actually just plop a camera somewhere and film life, it's very boring. No one's going to watch it. So, but even if you do that, you can't really escape the artistic framework. Like that too, in and of itself, is a statement of something. And eventually, um, unless you're using a lot of data, eventually the film will have to go off and the camera will stop, and that's your film. You still encapsulated something from your perspective. So I think the documentary is like an attempt at reality, but it's just a kind of just kind of a looser story than a fictional story. I think both are fairly fictional in their own way.
Hmm.
And both of them are fairly true in their own way when you really look at it, when you really think about it.
Hmm. I was really struck because I watched it leading up to this conversation. I watched it with my dad. We've watched a lot of movies together over the years, and I thought it might be nice. And I, I'm not surprised in retrospect, but I was riveted and I loved it. And I was like, every moment, I was like, and then my dad was not only bored, but he was he didn't say this, but I think it made him extremely uncomfortable. Like he had like an allergic reaction to the movie where it was like he had to like walk away and he was like f falling asleep and he was like checking his phone, which he wouldn't normally do during a movie. Like he's not even a phone addict type person. And I was like, it was so fascinating. I was like, this is, and then he was like, you know, I wonder what you make of
Yeah,
that.
I love it. I know. He's so right. He's so right to feel that way. It is boring. Like some of it, or I mean, or it's not, or it's not. I love that you were riveted. Like, but both your response and his response are like equally satisfying to me
Uh-huh.
as a filmmaker.
Uh-huh. Oh, I love that.
I think I purposefully I do there's a secret like again well because we're on the subject like there's a secret comedy in my very like serious anthropological ayahuasca documentary. There's a secret comedy in it in that like I do try to like ask you as a viewer to sit with some uncomfortable ideas and to sit with some uncomfortable styles of storytelling. Like I will not speak for 20 minutes and you just here's you're just going to watch it. Or like I will speak liltingly for 10 minutes and I task you to stay awake during this or whatever it may be. And then of course like the film being bookended by these ceremonies, like I'm asking you to come along for a journey and to sit in a very like strange room. And a lot of people I know who even loved the movie or even worked on the movie are like, God, that ending's really intense. Like, I need a break. I need to detox. I need quiet. Like, people's ears are ringing. So I ask a lot of the viewers actually. I ask them to be patient. I ask them to be um like willing to like be led. I ask them to embrace like a sort of meditative and quiet approach. And then I also, in some ways, like pummel them with the sounds of bugs and the jungle and strangeness and singing. So yeah, it's weird. Like I think it's divisive. And I just totally agree with your dad. I agree. I
I
agree with him.
totally disagree with my dad.
Yeah, but a lot, you know, it's interesting. Like a lot of people got really angry about it. And
Uh,
think like I think in some way I just also view that as a success because it's like, well, my film gave you the space to be angry.
uh,
Like there's like a tension and a disquiet here that's like pulling up anger in you. Like, okay, let it out.
mm,
Let it. But I mean, I should say like I would prefer people love it and enjoy it like you and are riveted,
mm.
but both are totally fine. That's really funny though. It's really interesting.
Do you have a sense of what made people angry about the film?
A fair people are mainly angry about like the kind of dualistic nature of my shaman.
Hmm.
So like some people say like I needed more information or like some people have like some qualms with the actual filmmaking style. But more so I think people are upset by the woman that I featured. You know, I say things like she claims she doesn't have an ego, and that really upsets people.
Hmm.
Like, what do you mean she doesn't? Of course she has an ego. Like even mentioning that she said that is upsetting. I mentioned that she, sure, it's controversial. Um, more controversial, I think, out of context. But like I speak in the film about some of the practices around children drinking ayahuasca, which really incites people. And yeah, I think people want to people assume that because she's a shaman and because she's administering ayahuasca, that she is all knowing and hasn't made mistakes and doesn't do anything wrong. But like the truth is that she does eat potato chips and she does talk on a cell phone and she does burn plastic at the center. Like they gather up all the plastic and they burn it. She did say it was good energy to do that. Like, and people just can't wrap their minds around that. Like to them, that just like discredits those types of things, discredit her and um, make her a scam artist who's like taking money from innocent Westerners. But that's I tried in the film, I tried to really just kind of present it like without too much guidance. I tried to present like all of the ways in which she's credible and some of the ways in which she is not.
Hmm.
And let you as a viewer, you know, and then I tried to hold the camera on her often and really like what have people watch her so that they can feel into their intuitive sense of who she is and what she is and whether or not she's trustworthy or real or not real. And I will say like the majority of people I think actually do come out of the film and say like, wow, she's an impressive woman. I want to visit her. How do I get to the center? So like 90% or more of the people actually walk away with that. But there's a 10% who's just, and I think honestly, like when people are really mad about stuff like that, I think what they're mad at is um, the like paradoxical nature of reality, if I may be so bold. Um, I think they're mad that a person, they're mad that they can't wrap their mind around the fact that a person can burn piles of plastic and call it good and also heal a person from a lifetime of trauma and genuinely navigate a realm that we cannot see. Or like that she had 5 husbands, which really upset people. Like if how can a woman have 5 husbands and also be so in touch with the divine spark of life that hundreds of people come to her monthly to just be near her healing wisdom, you know? How do those things coexist? People are like upset because it's actually really hard to live in the gray areas of life. It's like a huge, huge human challenge to say like, ah, I really like that person's really flawed and really right about a lot of things. Like they exist together. So I think like actually what people are mad at is the fact that like I'm really asking them to blur their lines of delineation. And it's hard to do that and it's uncomfortable to do that and it's not fun. It's like it's work to live in the grays of life. It takes a lot of like skill, I think.
I think that's very perceptive. Thank you for sharing your reflections on that. Yeah. Hmm. What were the sort of chapters of that project and bringing it into the world?
Um, it really was. It was conception and I pulled together like my really small film crew. Um, through my time in Prague in the Czech Republic, I'd become friends with like really talented, good filmmakers. So I was able to kind of ask my old friends to come with me as a crew and film. And um, putting together like the production side of it, like arranging visas. I then gathered like people who would participate in the ayahuasca ceremony. So I had to find people who were willing to have their ayahuasca ceremonies filmed. And like I had to find people who not only would be able to navigate the experience of ayahuasca itself, but also navigate like the experience of having a camera in your face during it. So I really carefully considered who I asked and why. And in the end, I asked 6 people and they all said yes and they came, which was really wonderful. And um, I had many Zoom interviews with a few different shamans. I think it was around 5 shamans I had narrowed it down to. And I would speak to them and kind of feel it out. But I always really wanted Estella. She was kind of the one I wanted. And she was the one who made me like wait the longest. So I was like kind of up until the last minute. I wasn't quite sure who I'd film. And then Estella said yes, and I went to film her. And then we filmed it, had the whole experience in the Amazon. And then I came home and I really like entered post-production. So editing, color grading, all of the normal stuff, sound mixing, um, really figuring out what the story was and how I would tell it and what, like, again, it was really different than I thought it would be, but just kind of piecing it together and then releasing it.
Hmm. How long did that whole process take?
From from filming to I think having a uh first cut, it was a little over a year, which is actually like pretty fast, like in general. And then like I officially released it like almost 2 years later because I sent it to a bunch of film festivals and was doing like the conventional film festival circuit run, which I now regret actually, because I ended up just saying no to some of the streaming offers I had gotten and really put it on YouTube. And like it found an audience on YouTube and I'm really like it's wonderful. I'm so happy. And I wish I had actually just like finished it and put it on YouTube right
Hmm.
away. I had to go through like a whole process of navigating what it means to make a film and yeah. So yeah, I guess a 2 year adventure all in all.
And what made you want to work with the shaman that you ended up working with specifically?
She was the only she was the only female at the
Hmm.
time. I don't know if this is still true to run her own ayahuasca center in Peru.
Hmm.
Only one. There were, of course, female ayahuasqueras who worked at centers, but she was the only one who said, like, this is mine. I'm going to build it. I'm going to do it and run it. And that was really intriguing to me. That was really intriguing to me. I was definitely open. Like, I wasn't seeking a female for the sake of it being a female, but
Hmm.
the other 4 shamans were all men. And I think the original concept, my original idea was I imagined it with men, but it was intuition. I don't know. It
Hmm.
was intuition. I had heard about her years before, and she was a really well-respected shaman, so I felt drawn to her.
If you could go back and give your past self advice about the process of making a documentary film, or you could give someone else advice about how to make a documentary film, what would you say?
Hmm. Oh gosh, this is a really interesting one because I have this thing I'm sort of still it's still present in me and I still go back and forth on it because as a person, I feel very proud of how I made the documentary in that I gave a lot of leeway to my subject and I I really um respected her requests to not be filmed. And I can sleep at night with a pure conscience, I think, knowing that. And I do think that is important. It's like it's actually still I still don't know. It's important and I think it is the most important thing. But then there's an element also in me where I felt like in turning off the camera at times, I was actually not being an honest storyteller either. So like what I traded in a clear conscience, I lost in terms of like perhaps my duty as a storyteller to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Because it became like the film is somewhat curated due to that. Like there were elements of her center that I didn't touch upon because I turned the camera off and didn't speak about certain things. And again, it's like my film wasn't necessarily about that, but as a storyteller, it feels like there's like a duty to keep going, keep filming, keep tell like if it's happening, this is within your realm as a storyteller, you should film it. Like yeah. But then again, I don't know. She asked me not to film it. What was I gonna do? Be like, no, hee hee hee. And then I'm just gonna release it and like sleep at night? Probably not. So I don't know. Maybe in some ways I'm not like fully cut out to be a documentary filmmaker because I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to make anyone feel bad. What I would potentially, I suppose, like the advice I would give to someone who's going out to make a documentary, I would probably say to them, film everything. Like, film everything, don't turn the camera off. And then you can decide later what you're morally comfortable with. Like, because perhaps I could have kept filming and found a way to tell the whole story and still keep integrity and respect for my subject. Maybe I would have done that, but I cut that option off. And I regret at least cutting the option off. Maybe I would have told the exact same story and all of that stuff would have ended on the cutting room floor. Maybe, but always having the options. And I think too, like my film in a way, I really leaned into the fact that there like wasn't a full narrative arc or there wasn't a lot of drama. I leaned into that as a like a necessary form of storytelling with the material that I had. Like that's what the project was asking to be and had to be with the materials given. But I think truthfully, like we're humans, we want some sort of tension and conflict. And in fact, utilizing that tension and conflict is a way to successfully tell a story. So I would encourage people to seek subjects that are like exciting so that you don't have to labor so hard over how to do it, which is what I did.
Hmm.
I was like looking at it being like, okay, my film must be meditative because that is the only avenue available. Again, nothing wrong with that at all. But if and when I make my next film, I'll seek something a bit like faster paced and more with more urgency and more kind of drama because like I'm a human being. I love the theater of it all. And I want to entertain people too at the end of the day.
Hmm. Your answer just now touched upon what I would describe as something like moral values or aesthetics about the ethics of storytelling, something like that. And I wonder if you
Yeah.
could say more about those values that you have and how you see storytelling.
Yeah, hmm. I think like I think the reason I finally felt comfortable releasing a film was because I knew like fully that to the best of my ability that a person can, I knew that I would be able to like step out of the way and let the story that like wanted to be told come through. And like I very much allowed myself to be like a vessel. Like I have a brain and I have hands and I have fingers and I have the will to do this. So like yes, universe. what is my story? What do you want told? I'll do it. Like, what do you want of me? I'm your willing soldier, you know? And I think when art comes from that place, like a true place of like, not just like, what am I gonna do? What story am I gonna tell? What's good? When art comes from a place of like, what is asking to be seen in the world right now? The the art is like it's naturally infused with integrity and it's naturally it's naturally nourishing. Like it's got a nourishing quality to it, and I think people can feel that. And so for me, like if you just look at if you just look at the facts, we're alive for a really short period of time. Like this can become a burden to think this way, but every single thing we do is precious and finite. Every single thing. Like when you sit down and you watch a Netflix show, you are you are using your life to do that. And your life is only this long. And like this much of your life is going to be spent watching TV. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, actually. Like, stories help us shape the world around us. So for me, my I want to treat people well and engage ethically with my subjects or my actors as a storyteller. But what really, really matters to me is that the person watching my story is using their life wisely by consuming my art. Like, I have a deep, deep, deep respect for for you and your time. And I've I really just decided and settled into the idea that if I am going to make something, I want it to move something in the person watching it. Like I'm not here to, again, no, yeah. I was going to say I'm not here to distract you, but in fact, I also think that can be lovely. Like if you watch something and it's fun and distracting and light, that's lovely. So I do actually like giving that to the world. But it really is important to me that the message is clear and clean. And so that if you watch something I've made, like you're going to get as clean as I can manage. You're going to get a message. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
That's like the real, that's like my real focus, integrity wise.
I think you really succeeded at that. Yeah.
That's my hope.
Hmm.
That's my genuine, yeah.
How do you feel like you grew as a person and a creator through that project?
Hmm. I think it was a big practice in surrendering. Like really, I really every step of the way just felt like I was just constantly like a wave crashing over and over again, just surrendering to the story that wanted to be told. Like I was always doing my best to, and I was doing my best to, again, it's like tell this story as a vessel for the universal will to be. And also like embracing as much Victoria as I could within it. Like why is Victoria telling this story? Like, well, because Victoria is really good at this, and Victoria likes this aesthetic, and Victoria does this. So it was like this kind of like it was a collaboration between myself and the universe to bring a movie out. And that like learning that I had the ability to do that was really fun and exciting. And like really just like technically understanding like you can just have the idea to make a film and fly 12 people to the jungle and film it and make a movie and release it and people watch it. Whoa, that's so cool. What fun. That's
Hmm.
so fun. Um, so it gave me like a confidence of like, I can do this. I can make a movie. Why not? Yeah, but as an artist, I just felt like I don't know. I'd never devoted so much time and energy to something as that. So it kind of like proved to myself I could finish a project. I could finally do it and make it. And yeah, it was incredible. It was an incredible learning experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I really respect the time and effort and care and reflection and blood and sweat and tears that went into that kind of a project. So really admire that. You are some meaningful fraction through your life. Hopefully, you live a long and blessed life. Uh, what would seem to you to be a beautiful use of the remainder of your life?
Hmm. I'm really happy as it is, including all of the hardness and the occasional melodrama. Um, I think the world kind of reoriented itself once I became a mom. So for me, my son is really kind of the center of my life, and no pressure to him. Like not like that center, don't worry. He'll do his own thing, and I will like do my best to facilitate that. But really just like spending time with my family.
Hmm,
Yeah, giving him love. Um, it's kind of like what I said earlier. It's like I actually just want kind of a good meal, and I would like to go on a nice walk outside in the woods and talk to my little baby and hug him and cuddle him and maybe make some more art. But like I'm totally satisfied with my life exactly as it is, truly.
hmm,
Just yeah. Again, it all comes back to love. I love if I'm with my family, I'm happy.
hmm,
My friends and my friends who are my family.
hmm,
Don't get it mixed up.
hmm. You said your friends are not your family or are your family?
Who are.
Are. Oh, very good. Um, from this place of abundance where you feel very happy with your life and uh, this place of content, what do you have any sense of what art you might like to make or feel called to make?
Hmm. Yeah, I have two sort of projects on the back burner, and I self-financed my film, and I can't do that again. So if I'm able to receive financing, my next project will be about the intersection between like psychosis or classically diagnosed mental illness and religious experience. So I'll follow subjects who um, believe they're in communication with God, or who believe they are, in fact, God or Jesus. And yeah, explore like what psychosis means in the grand scheme of things philosophically. And again, like I'm really interested in dissolving borders. So again, I think a person experiences psychosis and they speak to God and people say like that was psychosis. And I'm a bit more interested in exploring like, well, was it? Were they speaking to God? Like, what does it actually mean to speak to God? What does psychosis actually mean? This will be my next kind of pursuit. Um, but yeah, totally dependent upon if like I'm putting it out there hard, but like if some generous person on the internet wants to fund a feature film and be a producer, this is it.
How much do you
That's
need?
the one. I need like at least like $50,000.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I could do it for probably 50. Just
Hmm.
because I in particular have a subject in Scotland who's like a religious scholar. He has his PhD in divinity, and he is also diagnosed with pretty severe bipolar. He's an older retired man, fascinating mind, fascinating person. So part of it involves filming in Scotland, which is like an expense in and of itself. But I think I could do it for 50 grand, probably.
Well, may it be so. Hmm.
Maybe
I'd love to
so.
see that film. Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hmm. Well, we've covered a lot of different topics and you very kindly answered my questions. I wonder if there's anything that you'd like to say more about or dive more deeply into, talk about.
Mm. I actually have a few random questions for you, which is I'm really curious about like we spoke about this a little bit at the table at the dinner party we went to. But I'm curious about your relationship to home and to traveling. There's just like something I want to know, and I don't know what,
Hmm.
but I'm curious. And then I also like I'm sure you've spoken about it, but I don't know the meaning behind your name. If you chose your name, I'm sure this exists somewhere on the internet, but
Hmm.
I so that's like not what you were asking. You weren't asking for me to ask you
No,
questions, but that's what came to my
I
mind.
love questions and this is a great time for them. Um, yeah, maybe I'll start with my name. My given name is Michael. That's the name my parents gave me. And I've actually been reflecting on that recently because one of the archangels is named Michael. And I don't know, I think nominative determinism, that those qualities are in me, I think. Um,
My son's middle name is Michael,
oh,
by the way.
that's very sweet. That's very sweet. Uh,
Yeah.
and then Tasshin, in Japanese, you would pronounce it Tasshin. And I mispronounce my own name as Tasshin, and because I'm an American. And it means something like Reach Truth, which is the name that my podcast is Reach Truth, which is just Tashin's podcast because I had a podcast when I was like 13 or 14 and I really this time around I really didn't want it to be like a narrow only about one
Mhm.
topic, for example. I just wanted to be whatever I'm on about. Uh so Reach Truth is my name and another translation would be like achieve wisdom and the second character comes from Shinzen Young, who led the ceremony where I took Bodhisattva vows and received that name. And in Shingon Buddhism, in the tradition that one of the traditions he trained in, the first character of your teacher's name becomes the second character of your name. And so you there's kind of like passed down over time. And so the Shin is from Shinzen, and the first character, Tatsu, by itself is Tatsu, but then with the S sound, it changes to Tasshin. Um, it means, yeah, like reach or achieve, or has the sense of like touching. And it looks like it has a foot in it, so it's like walking, and which I think is interesting with my pilgrimage. But my primary teacher, Soryu, picked that character for me, and I asked him to pick my name. Traditionally, when people would do these ceremonies, they would say, "Oh, I want this quality. Like, can you find a character that means that?" But I really wanted both of my teachers to be picking my name in that way and to be connected to both of them. So he picked that character for me, and uh, yeah, so that's my name. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Hmm. And then travel and home. Well, it sounds like there's something on your heart specifically, but I'll say, I think a lot of people assume from their own experiences with travel, they're like, I've been doing this way of life for 4 years now, and people kind of assume that that would be exhausting and tiring. And, it is in some ways, sometimes, especially if I have like really long flights or something, but something that is meaningfully different for me than what I sense a lot of people's experience with travel is I am staying with people in their homes. And, this is a home that I'm in right now and that someone's putting me up in it. I've been here before multiple times. It's a familiar place to me, and my friend has welcomed me. And people always usually either explicitly or implicitly say, like, make yourself at home. And so this is kind of my home while I'm here, and I'm with friends who care about me. And that's a really, sometimes I have to stay in a hotel for practical reasons, like occasionally, maybe once a year or something. And when I have to do it, that's when I feel kind of lonely and exhausted because that's a transaction where I'm spending money to be in a place where no one actually really cares about me. And presumably I'm there because I don't really know someone and I just have to be in that place. And that's fine, but that's exhausting. And when I'm in someone's home, I feel home. So I'm home here and then on Friday I'll go somewhere else and be a different home and then I'll go somewhere else and um, I like that. I'm always with friends and I always have people who care about me around and people who I care about um and I love seeing different parts of the world and being connected to lots of different people and weaving a web of people that I love and care about and um I related to what you said about remembering your life in terms of places because one thing I love about my pilgrimage is it makes it really clear, like there's a beginning and an end to each chapter and like, oh, that was when
Yeah.
I was there and that had I can really bring an intention to being in a certain place for a certain time. Be like, I'm going to focus on this or I want to work on this or learn this or pray for this and um, that's been very fruitful to me to have natural beginnings and endings in that way and makes it really easy to remember what happened. And it sort of extends, um, like the rate at which you experience things, or like a lot of times if you're just in one place, it kind of blurs together and you can spend years in a place and be like, oh, wow, that went by. And now it's 2025. What are you doing? And I don't know, naturally having change from places makes sort of extends the vibrancy of my life, I think.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's I in growing up in California, there are no seasons. So it's almost like there's no marker for my life except for where I've been. That's
Hmm.
where it's this period and this period and this period and this period. And it sounds like you've sort of like embraced like your life in chapters almost.
I love thinking about it in terms of chapters and I write novels these days and I really like seeing people's lives in terms of fiction and stories and narrative and so chapters are just a very intuitive way to look at things, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Oh, it's time dilation I was thinking of. Yeah, like
Oh,
t time tends to dilate if you're just in one place and then it sort of counteracts that by having these different chapters and um, I like that. I like having a full, vibrant, meaningful life of adventure. And yeah, people also often ask, like, oh, are you going to do this forever? Peace Pilgrim, who is my hero, she took in it like a long-term vow to be on her pilgrimage until mankind learned the way of peace, which we still have not.
mhm.
Uh, so
Oh,
she died on her pilgrimage, but I don't know for mine. I could see basically two scenarios where I would settle down in one place or uh, put an end to my pilgrimage. And yeah, well, we'll just see what the story of life has in store for me.
yeah. I assume that's like a person specific, right? Like if you meet.
Yes, that would be one scenario if I had a partner and wanted to live with them in a specific place. And then the other one would be like, my work now is involves creating this organization, the Service Guild, and this crew of friends. And if I felt like my work was being held back by moving from place to place and being in different time zones, then that's also the situation in which I'd be like, okay, I should settle down in one place. And yeah, so far I've been able to make it work, and I quite like this way of life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think there's something interesting to me because despite having moved so much and lived in so many places, like I've got it's like the intellectual spirit of a nomad, but I also really crave home and like it's a necessity for me to feel like a space is mine and to feel honestly alone in it. So like I would much prefer a hotel than stay
Mm,
with people because like I want to be able to retreat into like like solitude, really.
hmm
Um, so like I'm always really interested in people who are genuinely able to pick up and move around because I relate to your quest and your urges and your spirit. And then I'm also like not repulsed in the sense of like ew. I mean like
hmm
repulsed in the sense of like that's not for me. Like
Totally.
whoa, just picking up and going and like staying at someone's house and someone's house. No. Ugh. But I also like but intellectually I completely understand that I've moved so much and gone to so many places. So
Mm,
I think when I meet someone like you, it's like it's fascinating in fact because you've actually done it. Like you're embracing it, you're living it, and you're satisfied with it and energized by it or whatever it might be. I find
mm,
that really fascinating. That must be why it like it stood out in my mind from when we met
mm,
and caught in my mind now because I
mm.
find it so interesting.
I do love alone time and solitude, and I really treasure when I get that. Sometimes I'll have it at a host. Like, I don't know, I've done like pet sitting for hosts before, and that's nice. I get to have a really lovely home to myself for a bit with an animal that I love dearly. But um, I think part of it when you say that is I mean, I trained at a monastery for a lot of my 20s, and that was really the opposite of having alone time in some ways. Like, there'd be extended silence of meditation, but you're still with other people. It's very much a collective endeavor. And I liked aspects of living in community, but it was also very taxing and overwhelming in some ways over time. And I like that I am always near people that I love and have a kind of community, but also I'm not spending, a year or two with people. It's like the longest I've stayed with people is a month or two, and then I go on elsewhere. And so that's enough time to really deeply connect with someone, learn from them. Also, I learned so much from the people I stay with and offer something hopefully uh, and then move onwards and see where life carries me. So it's kind of a golden mean for me in between totally being alone, living by myself, and living fully immersed in a community. And uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
I'm curious if you've found uh, this conversation has impacted your body at all, like if you feel different after this conversation.
Hmm. Hmm. I think you've connected something. Like there's like an ease in that you connected something. You asked me such an interesting pointed question about why I was interested in comedy, and truly I'd never thought of it like that. So like some part of me relaxed. And then like I also again like e- even though I like really love being social, like I'm also an introvert, so I also now feel tired.
Hmm. Totally.
Like I need to rest. Like if I go like after the dinner party, it's like I need to rest all day after that. It doesn't seem like I would
Mm,
necessarily. Yeah, so I think I feel like in my body I feel really happy to have had this conversation and nourished. And I also feel like, oh, I'm tired. Like my battery's a little, you know?
totally.
In I yeah, that's my honest response.
Hmm.
But it feels good. I've really enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Mm.
A lot, a lot. And I have forgotten we're filming.
Yes, success.
I actually like, yeah, wow. I actually like have mostly forgotten we're filming.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just feels like I'm hanging out with you. So that's nice too.
Mm,
That's really
mm.
yeah, success.
Yes. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time and really sharing your heart. I feel uh, energized and grateful and Yeah, I love so many of your answers, but I feel like I really learned something about love and self-love and self-respect, and uh, there are things that really motivated and inspired me about relation to spiritual practice and reality, and also creativity and art, and bringing ethical sensibilities to art and telling stories. So, yeah, you've been so generous in sharing your life with me, and I'm truly grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you for being such a generous host
Mm,
and like an incredible listener,
mm.
like truly incredible. And thank you for your curiosity. And it's really nice to talk to you. And I hope I talk to you again really soon.
I'm sure you will, and it's my absolute pleasure.
Mine too.